Shin Megami Tensei V Vengeance is a modern classic for RPG fans, and with the new Switch 2 in hand, I wanted to see, does the fresh hardware alone give it the boost it deserves? Now what I'm saying here is, there's no official upgrade, but I'm curious how the new power impacts visuals, load times and frame rate, and of course how it compares to that original Switch build. Well, this one, it's been requested more than a few times in the comments, so let me know down below if there's another game you'd like me to cover next. If you do find this video helpful, consider subscribing. I'm a smaller channel that's been at this now for 7 years, hundreds of Switch 1 reviews, deals videos, news, and we're only just getting warmed up on Switch 2. So join me for the ride and let's see what else this new console can do. So let's start with the basics first of all very quickly. Shin Megami Tensei V Vengeance is a re-release of the 2021 RPG that was already a modern classic in the genre, but it now packs a second storyline. Now it is set then in a post-apocalyptic Tokyo, a Tokyo that is consumed by demons and divine forces who are locked in endless conflict. Now you'll be playing as a young man who stumbles into this twisted wasteland and fuses with a mysterious being, becoming the Nahobino, that is basically part human, part demon. So yes, the opening of the story here sees you navigating this new Tokyo, forging alliances with demons, and taking on the role of a would-be savior or potential destroyer of the world itself. It's classic SMT, dark, mythological, and filled with tough choices. Gameplay-wise then, it's a turn-based RPG at its core, but there's a heavy emphasis on exploring this demon-infested world, negotiating with demons to join your team, and managing resources to survive what are extremely brutal battles. It's challenging, it's atmospheric, and it's very much earned its status as one of the best in the genre. But now look, this video today isn't a review of the game itself. I could be praising it for hours, honestly. We're here to see how the Switch 2's new hardware impacts performance. So let's get into that. So I personally never thought SMT 5 needed much of a visual boost to begin with, and well, I'm glad I felt that way because the difference here between Switch 1 and Switch 2, it's extremely subtle. So much so that if you've been watching my Switch 1 and Switch 2 videos, you'll know I've been doing a lot of visual side-by-side comparisons. Those take a lot of time to put together, but in this case, I've actually only done one because, honestly, you're just going to sit there for the most part and say, well, they look the bloody same to me. That said though, there are a few improvements worth noting. The textures are a bit sharper, there's less aliasing, so those jagged edges on the environment and characters, they are cleaned up, and the shadows, particularly in the main character's hair, have a bit more definition. It's exactly what you'd expect from a higher res output, and that's exactly what this is. It's a 4K image upscale. The other games we've looked at in this series have definitely seen major improvements, but it's clear this one was very much pushing the Switch 1 to its limits. I will say though, the one big visual change here I think is the UI. The text and the icons are much clearer on Switch 2. It's probably the most noticeable difference in the entire presentation, but again, look, that's kind of it really, so don't expect a huge leap like we saw with games such as Kingdom Come. This one is more a very small refinement than a dramatic overhaul. Now I do promise you then I have good news coming up, but let's get load times out of the way first because the story here is pretty similar to visuals. They're a bit better on Switch 2, but not by much. You'll see slightly quicker loading into the game and into battles, but we are talking about less than a second faster. And honestly, load times were never really a problem with SMT5 anyway, because they were already impressively swift. Alright, so finally, now the good news. This is what I was hoping for with SMT5 on Switch 2, an improvement to the frame rate. On Switch 1, it was such a strange case. It was never bad exactly, but it was all over the place. When you're sprinting through post-apocalyptic Tokyo, you'd feel it stuttering and dropping frames constantly. Certain dungeons too were particularly temperamental, but maybe most unusual was the cutscenes. They were some of the worst offenders with constant stuttering that really pulled you out of the story, which is such a huge part of the experiences you're seeing on screen right now. Well, fear not, I've put this to the test on Switch 2, capturing loads of gameplay to push it as much as possible, and I couldn't get it to budge from 30 FPS. That is the game changer here. It's steady, locked, and just so much smoother overall. Honestly, it might not mean it's worth a replay if you've already seen it all, But for anyone who hasn't, there's no better time to jump in. And then the cutscenes, smooth as they should be. The Switch 1 build was so aggressive with frame drops that I couldn't even do a proper side-by-side for this video. The Switch 1 cutscenes would instantly fall out of sync because it was sending them out of time. It was lagging behind what the Switch 2 version was outputting. So yeah, really unusual, but it really does make the story easier to enjoy because now you're not distracted by those constant stutters. I should also add here as well that the same goes for combat. Certain moves and visual effects would really push the Switch 1. And once again, nothing but stability during my time revisiting the opening couple of hours of the experience. So yeah, from a frame rate perspective, basically great stuff. So yeah, that's where we stand with SMT5 Vengeance on the Switch 2. Some of you will be disappointed there's no big graphical improvement here, but honestly, I don't think it needed it. The visuals were already pretty solid, and what really needed fixing was that frame rate. And that's exactly what we got, and for me, that's enough to make it just simply feel better. That said though, I'd absolutely love to see Atlus drop an official patch at some point in the future. Even if it's paid, I'd happily hand over the cash if it meant they could sharpen up these visuals, maybe upgrade the textures, and maybe even bump the frame rate to 60 FPS, because I think the Switch 2 has the power to make that happen, and it would be an incredible upgrade for one of the best RPGs out there. So yeah, basically like, still a masterpiece, an incredible game, and now with great performance. And yeah, so basically overall, a big thumbs up from me. Let me know if you've checked it out on Switch 2, or if there are any other games you'd like me to put through their paces on the new hardware. And if you enjoyed this one, do me a favor and subscribe. And now, I'll leave you with some frame rate footage. Enjoy.